Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News and Network. We're talking about zero trust. We were just giving specific examples of where we've been able to implement a part of this capability, the framework, et cetera, whatever it may be. Jim, let's go over to you at Fortinet. Give us an example of where you all have been asked to put together a capability that's allowed this to be enabled inside of an agency or a component or even a private sector.
So Luke, let me start from the top of that. Pre-COVID, I'd say the best examples of the implementation of zero trust were probably in the financial sector. You know, they're well-resourced, they've got the ability to put all this together. Within government, pre-COVID, it was probably in the air-gapped networks, probably the closed classified networks. But when you talk about zero trust, it relies on the attributes of visibility and control. And time is of the essence. You know, you may want to say, I want to do things statically, so I'm at least doing segmentation and the one-time authorizations, but ideally I want to do it dynamically. And that implies integration and automation. So you talked about architectures and frameworks. Fortinet has the fabric as its approach to putting this together, which means it's not just us, it's 400 partners in the ecosystem. So we have been able, with post-COVID, to work with federal partners to say, you want to increase speed, you want to do this on a risk-based basis, and we can give you this capability, whether it's for the identity management, whether it's integrating the enforcement engine, to work with things that are already in your ecosystem, because you got a lot of pressures on your budget. So we've been able to help a lot of them implement this remote telework in a secure fashion post-COVID by building on this broad ecosystem, Luke.
Fantastic, great example, and love that use case. All right, we're going to go to priorities. One priority, top priority, Brian Campo, for this year in regards to zero trust.
Yeah, I mean, I think our top priority is pretty easy. I mean, we're focused on TIC3. We really see that as being a huge enabler for the department. You know, we are lucky enough to have the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency as part of the organization. So, you know, we've gotten pretty clear understanding. We've been working directly with NIST to really get a deep working level knowledge of TIC 3.0 implementations. We've got a couple of early sort of references out there. You know, I anticipate that the DHS CISO is going to put out some pretty good guidance on, you know, where we're going to go with TIC 3.0. And then we from the CTO's office are going to work with the components to really try and give them, you know, a clear path to implementing TIC 3.0 across their constituent applications and programs. You know, and TIC 3.0 is such a good enabler that I think it gives us a good launching point for a lot of the other things that we want to do. You know, it supports data center migration. It supports, you know, a lot of the application security that we've got to do. So for us, you know, we are definitely going to be focused on TIC 3.0 as
TIC 3.0, fantastic. Glad to hear that. And I think, again, I got to applaud the OMB for the way they laid that out and giving you all the flexibility. Amma, number one priority, zero trust for you this year.
We have a lot of things that we're juggling in the air, but when it comes to number one, align with zero. So align with zero trust. We got to start with identity, right? And so we're making huge inroads into, I think, finally ditching some of our legacy identity management solutions. This last couple of years, we've cleaned up a lot of garbage, and our identity governance is actually looking very strong. We continue to bring in more data to complete that picture of everything we know about a user and make sure that it's the right user that's actually authorized to access the right systems, and when they leave, they're gone, and everything else that goes along with that. But really pushing our identity out into cloud, enabling us to have easier ability to connect into partners instead of having to issue people, you know, usernames and passwords that are external to the agency, things like that. Those are really critical for us. And that solid identity within the cloud is really the building blocks for us for the future of zero trust.
Fantastic. Chris, number one priority for the Navy on zero trust.
That's a good one. To get to zero trust, you know, sure. It's a journey in itself. And I would say from the enterprise IT standpoint, you know, our migration to M365 and how it enables a zero trust environment I would say from the department of the, so from the Don CIO side of the house is our number one priority. But when you look through the breadth and scope of what the Navy's tasked to do, you know, how that priority gets racked and stacked against our real priority, which is get to a Navy of 355 ships, right? So that is always, you know, there's competing priorities in an organization as large as the Department of the Navy. So, you know, you've got to balance enterprise services with warfighting functions. And there's a happy medium. But again, this crisis has really helped us get the enterprise initiatives front and center with the Secretary and the Chief Naval Operations. So that part's been encouraging. So it's really our number one priority is just to continue to keep the pedal down on this. And then like anything else, as the emphasis on these things sort of wanes over time, to ensure that we don't lose momentum, right? And we don't get driven off to something else. But yep, just
100% laser focus. And that's great, because then once you get that down and get it screwed tight, you can stack weight on that and move on to all the other pieces of a zero trust apparatus. All right, well, we only have a few minutes left, and we always like to close out sort of painting a picture of the future. Brian, I'm going to send it over to you first, and you know, give us a sort of a, you know, what does it look like in a couple of years? You're two years further into the zero trust capability, enabling that across the department. What does that look like? What are you expecting at that point in time?
Yeah, I think you know, as we look out past this year and into the, you know, the 3-year horizon timeframe, I think we're really looking at integrating you know, opportunities for increasing security through, you know, PEPs, looking at trying to get application level evaluation of security constraints, things like, you know, understanding the data that an application is sending across the wire. Really getting a lot more granular in how we're applying permissions, utilizing those things that we've got in our zero trust stack. You know, getting our data defined, so we can better understand whether, you know, a certain request should be available to any user. You know, understanding where that data is going, how it's being used. You know, I think data is definitely going to be that longer term goal for us. Just because, you know, as we start to get our infrastructure and as we start to get our connectivity a lot more secure, you know, we're just going to keep going down the stack, getting a little bit more granular, you know, and I think that ends up really heavily in the data array and really at the application level. Ultimately, the data is the oil, right? Amen. Jim, how about at Fortinet? What does it look like in a couple of years for you all?
So Luke, apart from the functional pillars that we've been talking about throughout this, the identity management, the access control, et cetera, I think the keys to zero trust are automation, they're the interoperability of data, and those are really the architectural things. What's going to drive this? The engine that's going to use your oil is AI. AI is what's going to give you the speed and scale to do zero trust, certainly in a dynamic environment where you want to do it and say, I'm responding in real time to what I see. And what I see for the federal government is to build on what the private sector has developed in that. Because if you look at AI and you start from scratch and do a crash project, odds are it's going to crash and burn. I've got friends who can tell me 300 ways they can fail on an AI project. Private sector's 10 years into doing this for cybersecurity purposes. It's become more powerful. It's also become more portable to the point where we can now give federal partners forward deployable versions of stuff they can put in their environment, because we recognize that you have networks and data where you don't want even the telemetry about it to go off-prem, but still you want the capability to sense a disturbance in the force and to be able to react to it. And your partners in industry can now give you that AI engine that can ingest that can see the anomaly, and that can even give you the AI-driven policy response to it. So don't invent a wheel. We got a bunch of them.
I love it. AI being incorporated fully into the solution set. Sounds fantastic. Sammy, how about over at Okta? We talked a lot about ID management. What does it look like in a couple of years? Are you just going to do a retina scan and magically I'm going to log on? What can we expect?
Yeah, there's a lot that obviously is bandied around, but I think it's going back to those fundamental basic principles. We've already built a lot of things around the identity of the user, identity of the device. It's about being able to act on all of that context. So we recognize that although we have a really broad portfolio of access control tools and ability to do access for not just applications but to infrastructure, it's really going to that basic principle of saying, what are the actual controls that you can put in place? And we're iterating on that. If you look at like the NIST guidance, the 800-207, there is no one architecture. There is no one trust algorithm that's going to solve it. Instead, we're really focusing on not only building what Okta is building organically and it's already delivered to our partners here, even on this in this panel today, but also making sure that the broader ecosystem is fully enabled. So we need to go deeper as an industry into things like continuous. The continuous authentication authorization is something where standards don't exist today. So we're working with industry partners and agencies and NIST to define what those standards look like to get that future. So I think that's going to be critical. It's not just, the auth and OT decision at point in time. It's having that deeper integration across the ecosystem to be able to do it continuously.
Sort of this complexitron of activity, and I love the idea of this continuous authorization, right? Because at any given moment, that environment, that risk posture could change, and you got to have that situation real time. Junaid, how about at Verizon? What's it look like in a couple of years? What can we expect from Verizon?
From the Verizon perspective, we are making a huge investment in Zero Trust as a service, and we believe that an as-a-service model, just like computing has gone to an as-a-service model, is just the easiest for a federal government for a number of reasons. They just buy what they need. But the other benefit is creating different Zero Trust networks for different departments and teams. So if you take the idea of a secure enclave, which was how we built top secret networks, and we have physical systems, now imagine being able to spawn 10, 100, 1,000 Zero Trust network instances that are self-contained enclaves with a set of people and a set of resources. We think this is the most elegant approach for a Zero Trust implementation, because it gives the Department of Defense and federal and state agencies complete latitude to spin up or increase capacity and reduce capacity. And as everyone knows, there's a number of mandates to move to an as-a-service model to save taxpayer money, and we are fully aligned in implementing that.
It's a fascinating concept there, and something that you don't, quite frankly, at least from my little version of the world, don't hear as much about. And I think it makes a lot of sense, and certainly it's something that the federal government, where they can buy something as a service and ensure the integrity and cost effectiveness, et cetera, certainly would want to do something like that. So I love the idea. How about at CBP? You talked about a very complex environment over there. What does that look like in a couple of years? If I'm a freshly minted officer coming through FLETC, getting ready to get out there on the line, what can I expect?
Yeah, so for Zero Trust and for where we're going with technology in general, I mean, really, we're looking at enablement. We're going to make it easier for both the officers to have what they need anywhere, anytime, and make it easier to be able to connect into our partners. So I think that's the first thing is, embracing a lot of common standards, making things just basic and easier and available and resilient wherever you are and whenever you need that data, that information, that access. The other thing I think what we're going to see is we're going to have much more intelligence about really everything that's going on in the network, and along with that intelligence, be able to understand the posture, understand all the various aspects of all these devices and all the people and their access rights they have, what they're provisioned for, what they're not provisioned for, and the governance layer to ensure that that's the way that they're actually being given the access. But also on top of that, we overlay the automation. And that's going to be, I think, one of the next big keys for us in security is not having people have to chase down problems or users or systems, is that the network will have the intelligence and then act on that intelligence to enforce the appropriate standards and then respond as appropriate if we see breaches or other issues.
Sure, and not only that, just as you're bringing people onto the enclave and sort of the environment changes, it's dynamically done. People coming off the enclave, right? And sort of that gets sort of that cleanup as you talked about, just sort of, I don't want to say magically happens, but happens and happens properly. Chris, how about at the Department of Navy, right? So now you've got this capability installed, right? It's fully realized, you're off and running. What does it look like in a couple of years from now? And what are you going to expect to see in regards to the ability to continue to enable a zero trust environment and give what you're looking for on those ships and aircraft, et cetera?
It's going to change the way we work. I mean, principally, it's going to change the way we work, shore-based, right? Because that's where most of the zero trust things come into play. You could argue to one degree or another. I know it's not based on zero trust principles, but our ships at sea are kind of their own little enclaves, right? And we have secure ways to get them information back and forth when we choose to communicate with those devices. But, it's just going to allow us to change the way we do business, which is more adoption of telework, the reduction of physical facilities that we have to maintain, the flattening of our network. And really, as we understand that, the end user, right? It's all about the data. So first of all, it's all about the data. But, that if I can push my workforce just about anywhere on the planet and provide them in an environment that they can get to information without having to come through what would be legacy architecture, that's a huge win for us. And just to be able to continue to adopt that and be assured that the organizations that are set up to operate and defend our networks, principally Fleet Cyber, Navnet, Warcom, NCDOC, provide those, to make the job as easy as we can on that workforce is kind of the number one objective. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting there.
Fantastic. And let them do what they do, which is defending this nation. I want to thank all of you today for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's tough out there. You guys are dealing with some not very easy stuff. So really do appreciate it. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at the Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in to us every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of Federal News Network.